And we're live. Welcome to The Unspoken Truth. I'm your host, Robert Brass, and I'm joined by my co-host, Edward Anderson. It's 5:30 here in Sydney and 2:30 p.m. there in Minnesota. Ed, g'day, mate. How are you?
G'day, Robbie. How's my favorite cronolian? What do you say, cronolian or cronola?
Cronolian? Yeah, I think you call them like Shire residents. We're from the Shire, like Bilbo Baggins from The Hobbit or some shit like that. I don't know. They say that Shire is God's country here in Australia, but I think it's just redneck central on the beach. That's really all it is.
Well, you're not in the Shire. You're on the beach.
The area is called the Sutherland Shire.
It is. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
cool.
So it's referred to collectively as the Shire, like that.
Okay, so you are officially the tallest hobbit that I know.
Yeah, that's it. I'm the tallest redneck hobbit you know. The only thing I'm missing is a gun.
Hey, wrong country, man. Come over here. We'll take care of you.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Unspoken Truth. If this is your first time here, Ed and I are live every day at this time. And we're also live over on, well, we're not live, but we're over on Spotify and Apple Podcast as a podcast as well. And we like to pull back the curtain behind the stories that are happening in mainstream media and give you a little bit of unspoken truth. So if this is your first time here, you're in for a bit of a treat today. We've got some great topics that we're going to cover off on. Make sure you come on over to Twitter, to Telegram, and to Rumble and follow us. All of the links are down below in the description. And some of the links that I'll be talking about today are already in the description there for you. So you can have a look at those. And if we talk about something throughout the show, we'll amend that as we go. We've got a lot happening today. There's a lot happening in this crazy world of ours, and we're going to start off today by talking about the debt ceiling deal. Going right down to the wire. It's only next week that's actually happening. The debt ceiling deal has happened. Kevin McCarthy's gone away and done his thing, but the reality is we seem to be losing out on that deal again. And, you know, a good negotiation is said that one that nobody is happy. Joe Biden even said that, but you know, you're not going to have to give away the farm in the process, which is what he seems to have done. I want to talk about why this keeps happening as well. I think that's an interesting conversation point. And I'm going to give you an update on the war in the Ukraine from a slightly different perspective. I'm going to show you why no matter what you do in your life, no matter where you are on planet Earth, you should never, ever follow what a politician tells you to do, and you should never follow them blindly into a conflict, into a war, because war is an absolute, complete, and total failure of humanity. And I'll show you that in a couple of short clips today that are actually quite upsetting. There's nothing graphic about any of it, but they're quite, they're very sad. They're very sad, and it's from the Russian perspective of all things. And, you know, the Russians are the bad guys invading, and they're marauding through the countryside of Ukraine, but we have to remember that they're human beings as well. And I'm not trying to be a Russian bro or something like that. What I'm trying to do is to give you the unspoken truth and show you the human side behind all of this chaos. But before we get started today, Ed, have you got any opening remarks for us?
Yeah, so what's a Twitter? What's it? You
still don't know. Come on, man. That was your job over the long weekend.
I know. I do it. So welcome to everyone in the Hey Ed WhatsApp group and on the Hey Ed YouTube channel. We do stream now live on the Hey Ed YouTube channel. So I hope that you guys catch on and participate. No, this should be a lot of fun today. So it's always fun. We always say that, but one of these days we should have just a really bad podcast just for comparison, just for contrast. But no, I think this would be a very interesting show. So
sometimes on that point, Ed, I'm looking at the things to talk about because I'm looking at the news all day long, right? And I would say to people, whatever you do, don't do that, because you get pulled down this big, deep, dark rabbit hole, and it's really negative, and the news is negative because if it bleeds, it leads. So you're always hearing about this bad stuff that's going on in the world. I'm pretty desensitized to it because I've been doing it for such a long time. But sometimes I look at it and think, yeah, those subjects are a bit shit, like there's nothing really to say about those things. But they turn out to be our best podcasts. And because you're only just grazing over the top of the actual news report or the subject, but then you are talking about what's going on behind it, the unspoken truth behind the curtain there. So I'm looking forward to doing that today with you here about this debt ceiling, and you guys are in for a treat when it comes to the war on Ukraine, if that could be a treat. But I'll show you something you've never seen before and give you a perspective that you've never seen. So it's pretty good.
Okay, so am I leading it off or?
Let's do it. Tell me, before we get going with the debt ceiling, I want to just get some background on a debt ceiling. The debt ceiling was created in World War II, right? How much money do you need? We need this much money. Okay, cool. You can spend everything up until there, then you're good to go. World War II ended, we won, and everything was good, and that stayed in place every year. How much money do you need? This much. We need. And how many times had it been raised? Like 89 times or something like that?
Something like that.
Well, why does it even exist? Because it's a paradox of the English language. It's like the debt ceiling, but then like if I look up at the ceiling of the room that I'm in, I can't raise the ceiling, man. I can't. It's impossible.
Well, there are two things. There are two universes where the impossible becomes possible. Okay, one universe is in the Marvel comic strips. They're never really dead. You can always bring them back somehow.
Yeah.
And in politics,
that which is the alternative universe that we keep talking about.
That's right. So, I mean, look, they don't like constraints on their spending.
So why do they have? Why didn't they just abolish the ceiling? Fair enough. The government's got bills to pay. They need to spend money. So why do they restrain themselves there? Because both parties are as bad as each other. They say we're fiscally responsible. We're not going to raise the debt ceiling. We won't do this. And now Kevin McCarthy's come out and said, well, we passed this legislation months ago. We were ready to go months ago, and we're not going to spend any more money. We're going to put this on the back burner. And he's come out with all of these things, but the reality is they're no different to the Democrats.
Well, yeah. Well, listen, part of it, the two-part answer to that. First is they want to have the illusion there of responsibility. Yeah, I know that, politicians have a bad reputation of spending money, but we do have that debt limit to keep us honest. They don't, but they can say that in their speeches, right? So part of that is to maintain the illusion that there is some control over the politicians. And the other reason is it does act as kind of like a benchmark. It tells you how bad you're doing, and they just want to know, okay, so we have to start slowing things down ahead of this little game we have to play for a few weeks. So it acts as kind of like a touchstone, little point at which that doesn't mean they're going to stop. That just means they kind of adjust things a little bit around that time period. They're going to go right back to their old ways. So no, it's all a game. It's all nonsense. It's all mirrors, and people have to understand that it is a game. It's not real, and this is all for show.
All right, let's have a look at your little report. What have you got for us?
Yeah, right. So about halfway through the report, I'm going to pause because there's kind of two different subject matters inside of my report that I want to cover. So about halfway through the report, I will pause, and then we'll pick it up again at the end.
All right, perfect.
We talk about this vaulted debt ceiling agreement that just came out. And spoiler alert, we were betrayed again. Okay, so as I personally predicted, I thought that there would be a debt ceiling agreement, and sure enough, we got it. And also I predicted that the Republicans would cave, and sure enough, they did. So let's talk generally about what this debt ceiling agreement does. By the way, it's not official yet. They do still have to vote on it. I mean, there's still a small sliver of a chance that the right things could happen, but I don't see it happening. So the big bullet points on this is that they agreed to freeze spending for the next 2 years, the post-COVID spending, maybe up a little, down a little. But you have to remember that the post-COVID spending was up very sharply. So they didn't actually reduce expenditure. The Democrats still have all of their pet projects in place. The IRS is still scheduled to get all of their money. Well, about $1 trillion left. And McCarthy is calling that a big win. We scaled back the IRS, by $1 billion, which still leaves them $79 billion to arm 86,000 new IRS agents. So that's still in place. This tuition reduction scam, that's still in place. This Green New Deal stuff where they fund all these really stupid, bad environmental projects, that's still in place. And so what did we get for that 2 year of a freeze in post-COVID spending? Well, we got a guarantee that 2 years from now, the debt ceiling will automatically be bumped up. And they just locked in a guaranteed increase in our national debt by at least $4 trillion. Now, McCarthy is calling this a victory because he was able to get a few slivers of some of the things that he wanted. Look, this is what these politicians do, right? They never admit defeat. They're never wrong, They never have a failure. They always find a victory in there. But this package is a disgrace. And listen, they probably just got Donald Trump reelected. Nothing is going to change in Washington as long as your traditional swamp monsters are there. The only way anything is going to change in Washington is if we retire some of these established Republicans and get people in there with actual spines who will actually do the right thing by the American people. Kevin McCarthy is part of the swamp. He is an establishment politician. And on the Democrat side, their leadership is absolutely, talk about swamp monsters. These are swamp monsters on steroids. And they blew it because the Republicans had everything going for them. They had public opinion on their side, and they still managed to blow it. Now, some articles, like in the Wall Street Journal, they showed that the spending curve has been tapered, and now it's been flattening out. Well, it's flattened out after the dramatic increase in the post-COVID spending. Let's take a look at a chart out of Zero Hedge. Total farce, real spending under debt ceiling deal, actually, they always find a big. Okay, so are we good?
We're good, yeah.
Okay, so the swamp wins again. Okay, it's the same old story, it's the same old song and dance, and the Republicans do the same thing that they've always done. Now, the reason why I made a comment about how McCarthy might have just gotten Trump elected is that Trump's big selling point was that he is not a traditional politician. He hates just as many Republicans as he does Democrats.
Didn't the government shut down under him? Under
Well,
Trump, that is?
it depends on what you mean by shut down.
Well, there was, I think the debt ceiling went to a point where they shut it down, and but they mucked around for a week or something like that after.
And everyone still got paid. I mean, the government shut down. Oh, no one's getting paid. These guys just got a free vacation. That's what they got.
Literally, you get a week's paid leave.
I mean, a government employee is probably ecstatic when the government shuts down. Hey, sweetheart, book that trip. I got a couple of weeks coming to me at least. Let's go for it. But Trump is the one guy who is least concerned with towing the party line. With least, he doesn't have the same people to answer to that an establishment Republican does. And people want that. People, I think, are the reason why Trump got elected in the first place is because they are sick of the establishment. They're sick of being ignored, and they saw Trump as a non-politician. So in this day and age, not being a politician is a big advantage if you want to get elected. The problem is there are a lot of really good people out there in the country who would make really good politicians because they would look out for our interests, but they don't have the name recognition. They're not well known enough to run for office. Well, Trump is famous enough, and he happens to be a non-politician. But this is the prediction I made about how a debt ceiling is going to be reached. That was the easiest prediction I could ever make. While people were wringing their hands over, if they don't pass it, then the world's going to fall apart. Don't worry about it. They're going to pass one. And even if they didn't, they'll just pass a CR, a continuing resolution, or they'll put a Band-Aid on them. They know that we've seen this movie so many times before. I could say that I can say the dialogue because I've heard it. I've seen the movie so often. So. And now I'm sure you don't have the problem in Australia. You don't have that problem with the deep state or with establishment politicians, right, Rob?
It's different. So we have something similar, but it's different to what you guys have. Well, it seems like in the American system, what you have is like really badly amplified, and because of the huge division that you have, I always say. You know, if I could be how do I put it? If I could be non-negative for a second and be an optimist about Australian society, whenever you watch Question Time in the Australian Parliament, what you're actually witnessing, and I've watched that a lot over the years, what you're witnessing are two sides of politics arguing how to spend the prosperity of our money. And on one side of politics, you have people saying, this is what we're going to do, and that side's the government. And the other side saying, you shouldn't do it like that. We don't support that. You should do it like this instead. But really, they're both the same side they're two sides of the same coin because they're saying the same thing. And if one party's approach is slightly different to another party's approach, the end result is still the same, meaning they're going to spend that amount of money on that particular thing to get that particular outcome. And so if I'm an optimist about Australian society and our political system, I could say that that's a good thing. You have these politicians screaming and shouting at each other, and there's what would seem like massive division here in Australia. But the reality is, behind closed doors, they're all mates. Behind closed doors, you see them playing sport together. Behind closed doors, you see them talking to each other all the time. Behind closed doors, it seems like, actually, it looks like this is a system that these people want to work. And they're not doing it because they're trying to raise money to get re-elected. They're not doing it to try and raise money for the Liberal Party or the Labor Party or the Greens Party. They're trying to work together and come together as a collective to figure out the best way to move forward. And you would have heard it before, Australia's called the lucky country. And I really think that we are the lucky country. We're the world's mind. We have all the iron ore, the coal, the uranium, the gas. We have all of the world's natural resources. But we have these people that squabble about the best way to actually deal with these things. And is there a better way? Yes, of course. No matter how good it is, it can always be better. And that's actually one thing that I'm really optimistic about in Australian society is the government is continuously pushing forward, pushing the boundaries, trying to make our society better. So if you get out of your own way for a second and put all your cynicism aside and all your criticism aside of what's actually going on, are we better off today than we were 20 years ago? Yes. The answer is yes. Is the government better today than it was 20 years ago? Yes, it is. Irrespective of what you think of the leadership, irrespective of what you think of those people, is your way of life better now today than what it was 20 years ago? Yes. The answer is yes. So we don't have the same type of debt ceiling problems or the same types of political discourse that you have in the US. We still have them, but it's in a very, very different way to what you would expect. And I don't think there's many places in the world other than Australia where we can compare ourselves to G7, G20 type countries where we're doing better than them. Yesterday, Albo was asked in Parliament, when are you going to take responsibility for the inflation that's happening here in Australia? And he answered the question by saying, look, I was just over at the G7 in Japan, and I'll paraphrase what he said. We're doing better than this country, this country, this country. So inflation in Australia is better and less than all of the G7. So we're, as he says, that we're outperforming the rest of the world. And then later on, someone, I'm pretty sure it was Alba, it might have been someone else, the treasurer or someone, said when the shadow treasurer, so the person that's not in government but holding that portfolio, when you were in government just a year ago, why didn't you have a focus on inflation? Why didn't you give that some attention? And he said, well, we're not in government now. It's not our problem. It's their problem. Yeah. They need to deal with it. So he just absolved himself of the responsibility. The Labor government's been there for a year. And how are they supposed to get that under control in a year? These things take years to actually come to a head. It's come to a head, and all of a sudden it's their fault. Hang on a minute. You've been there for the last 8 years, and you've caused all of this, and now you're blaming them? Like, I don't like the Labor Party any more than I like the Liberal Party, but, man, that doesn't make any sense. So that's what I'm saying. The type of argument that we have is very different to the argument that what you're seeing there, where Kevin McCarthy is saying, we're not going to spend any more money on this, and where 80,000 IRS agents are not going to happen for a year, but they're still going to happen. The amount of money you spend on the IRS, $80 billion, that's more than the GDP of most countries, for heaven's sake. It's unbelievable.
We're going to have more IRS agents than we have military personnel in all branches.
It's insane, man. Isn't it something like one in 5 or 1 in 6 people in America work for the government? In some level, like local, state, or federal.
Yeah, sounds right.
It's a massive machine, man. Massive.
Yeah, and the trick about saying, we're not that bad. Look at the country over there; they're doing a whole lot better. Every leader of every country can say that, except for that poor president of Argentina. Who's he? He doesn't have anyone to point to.
The president of Turkey got re-elected based on his reduction in inflation. I was looking at that chart because I was going to do that as a story the other day, and it's like 60, 70, 80, 88% of inflation. Then it went, and the chart's fallen away in the right direction. Yeah, so it's down to like 40%. Yeah. But inflation in Turkey is like 40%, and I'm saying that's a good thing. Well, it's better than 88%.
Yeah.
And he got re-elected.
Yeah. Forget the fact that 80% was gotten to under him.
Yeah, because he's
Forget
been there
that.
for the last 20 years.
That's right.
So what about this before you move on to the next bit?
Mhm.
Recep Tayyip Erdogan was re-elected to the parliament after a runoff election, and he won. Okay, fair and square. Assume their system is not corrupt and they got there, but however he got there, right? In the end, nothing you can do about it. He's there. So he gets re-elected, and then when he's re-elected, he goes out in front of a whole bunch of people that are cheering him on. Yeah, you won. And he's got a handful of money, and he's handing out money to the people in the crowd. I'm like, oh.
Take a lesson from Caesar. Yeah.
I know you're happy and all, and I know you only want what's best for your country and all. Let's assume, put all the corruption and all the bad stuff aside, that you actually do want this to be a better place, but you're handing out money after you just won an election. But then you might as well have been handing out toilet paper, because those Turkish dollars are not worth anything, man.
Maybe that's what he's doing. He's passing out, home decoration. Maybe
just to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Here, give me a pile of that. He's got a pile of it. He's just handing it out to everybody. But if you think corruption's not a real thing, all you have to do is watch the Turkish president handing out money to his constituents, and you can't say that that's not corrupt.
What on
earth could he be thinking?
Watch American Congress. If you want to see corruption, we have corruption here at every level. Now, I do want to respond to, are you better off today than you were 20 years ago? Well, here in America, I would argue we are not better off than we were 20 years ago. If you're a young couple wanting to buy a house, 20 years ago, you probably could have swung it. Nowadays, most young couples cannot afford to buy a house.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The same would be true here.
Yeah. So what do you mean? Someone says, are you better off than you were 20 years ago?
Well, I look at society in its totality, right? You've got access to so much more.
We have our brand name stores trying to trans our children without us knowing it. Society has turned up. We were just talking about this before the break, Rob.
We've got to do the Baal symbol, the Satan symbol, right? That's what Satan does, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll take your word for it. I didn't know that.
That's going to be the unspoken truth from here on in. You got to put funny eyes on.
We should come up with a secret symbol that we flash during the show. only our followers would know it. So I don't think we're better off today than we were 20 years ago. And that's part of the problem. When was the last big, technological achievement that has changed the world? Okay, I'll give you the cell phones. I'll give you that. But aside from that, and we're just starting to get AI. Okay, so that's coming.
Yeah, we can't say that's taken a leap yet, can you? It's just beginning. Yeah, right. In the next 18 months, probably that will.
But other than those small things, I mean, how have we really advanced our societies over the past 20 years, the past generation, right?
Well,
I don't see it.
Again, I say it in its totality. Ed, like here in Australia, we live in peace and security, man. We live in we have law and order. It's a pretty good society. If I'm an optimist about things, I could nitpick 1,000 things to say that was wrong with it. But as a whole, I've got a pocket full of money, a fridge full of food, and I can afford to live in this society. It's actually pretty good, and I've got time for recreation, for friends, for family, a bunch of things like that.
Okay, well, I don't think I'm nitpicking. I have a fridge full of food now, including a bunch of steaks, guys.
You got a lot of toilet paper too.
So for you bug-loving, but I had a fridge full of steaks 20 years ago too. And a Law and Order. I had Law and Order 20 years ago. In fact, I had a lot more Law and Order 20 years ago than I do today.
Yeah.
So I don't buy the Law and Order argument. We've gone from actual policemen to Stasi police.
We've got to get you here in Cronulla, then maybe like your perspective will shift a little bit. Tell me, why does this keep happening? You said a couple of times already that they're singing from the same songbook that was sung from last year. You could almost recite what they're actually doing, and it's the same thing over and over again. And they put this perception out like everything's okay, we've reached a deal, and we're on the Republican side, we've got what we wanted, and on the Democrat side, they got what they wanted, but no one got everything they wanted. So they put this perception out there like that. But the reality is you're about to show the next part in Zero Hedge there from that graph to say that spending is actually increasing. And here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, you might be wondering, why does this debt ceiling thing even matter? Why do you care? Well, the reality is this is the very end of the financial system as you know it. This is the end of the fiat system. Because if we are able to move the debt in America up another $4.5 trillion, whatever it is, then we're approaching that $50 trillion mark. And the point between $40 and $50 trillion worth of debt, and you're not far away, you're only 2 years away from that actually happening when you go over that $40 trillion mark. Once you go across that mark, the interest payments required are greater than the sum of the government's revenue. So what are you going to do then when you can no longer, you're going to turn into a bloody banana republic by defaulting on all the debts?
Yeah, I mean, the financial system, the global financial system, for that matter, as we know it, is coming to an end.
That's why you should care about this. That's why you should pay attention to it.
Yeah, what you're seeing is you are all live witnesses to what's going on, and if you're young enough, you're going to be able to tell your grandchildren how you were there and you saw the end of the last financial system. Yeah,
you're not going to live long enough to see it twice. Unfortunately, you're only going to see this once.
Yeah. All right. So let's finish my presentation, and then we'll polish it up at the end.
All right.
But this package is a disgrace and Republicans, and get people in there with actual spines who, their leadership is on their side, and they still managed to blow it. Now, some articles, like in the Wall Street Journal, they showed that the spending curve has been tapered, and now it's been flattening out. Well, it's flattened out after the dramatic increase in the post-COVID spending. Let's take a look at a chart out of Zero Hedge. Total farce, real spending under debt ceiling deal actually goes up next year. I'll let you read this article on your own if you want, but let's take a look at this chart. Federal debt held by the public is projected to rise from 98% of GDP in 2023, this year, to 118% in 2033, an average increase of 2 percentage points per year. Over that period, the growth of interest costs and mandatory spending outpaces the growth of revenues and the economy, driving up the debt. Those factors persist beyond 2033, pushing federal debt higher still to 195% of GDP in 2053. Just look at this. This is the projection from here. See this black line? This is today, right? This is the projected increase in our national debt. Okay, so regarding, this highfalutin, beautiful debt ceiling agreement that they came up with, they failed the American people once again. And listen, for those people out there who are saying, yeah, well, Ed, everything you're talking about, this happens. This is part of the business cycle. This has all happened before. No, none of this has happened before. Yes, we've seen other business cycles, but never before has credit card debt been this high. Never before has a national debt level been this high. Never before have home prices been this high. Now, this is why I insist that in the next financial crisis, we are going to see a financial crisis that puts the 2008 to 2010 financial crisis to shame. It's going to make that look like a picnic. So you have to start preparing. And if you're wondering about how the markets are reacting to this news, I mean, what a relief. They came up with a debt ceiling deal. Okay, so as I'm recording this, it is halfway through the day on Tuesday, and we see the market is down 142 points. Now, this doesn't seem like a very big sell-off, and it really isn't. But the point is, it should be having a huge rally. If this is such a wonderful deal, then why isn't the market relieved, and why isn't it rallying? I'll tell you why. Because this is a non-issue. Wall Street was expecting this. Just like I predicted that there would be a deal in the 11th hour, sure enough, we got it. Wall Street is not surprised. Wall Street always has something to worry about, but they're always looking at the bigger picture, right? No one issue usually is going to move the market dramatically. Anyway, in the description below, please let me know whether you think that this debt ceiling agreement was a win or a loss for the American people. In the meantime, reduce your exposure to your bank, put some of your money into gold and silver, and establish streams of passive recurring income. Do it now.
Do it now. You sound like Arnie there. Do it now.
Do it now.
You need to reduce your exposure to the bank, some gold and silver, and some passive recurring income. You need to do that now. Before we move on and discuss that, because this is in the spirit of everything that you've just been talking about, I want to share a little video as well.
I said yesterday, a test balloon, and the lessons they learned from this, namely how did they fail and where did they fail to get the people to just do what they were told, to comply, and they will take this to the next level. So we're talking, of course, about digital ID. It's in preparation. We're already talking about this. The Parliament circumvented itself pretty much by taking, with a large majority, a vote to not even involve Parliament. It goes directly behind closed doors to negotiate the digital ID. The next thing we will be seeing is, of course, digital state currency. That will be the ultimate blow to depriving us of all of our freedom and privacy. And and of course, these 15-minute ghettos that I already talked about yesterday. These are the next steps.
If you think that the world is not at the end of the fiat system, you're completely wrong. And didn't we say just the other day that there was 200 and something governments around the world, even though there's only 193 governments, but there was 200 and something governments, and I think it must be different provinces looking at it as well, looking at central bank digital currencies, because they know that this rock show, this clown show of debt ceiling and fiat currencies just can't go on any longer. And to your point, you showed a graph that shows in 2033, it seems like a long way away. I saw a funny meme. I saw a funny meme yesterday, like 2040 is as close as 2006, and the dude's like got his hands going, oh my God. And it seems like a long way away, but it's not. You're only talking like 7 years away, and that's the end of the fiat system. But it's not. They're not just going to let the fiat system end and let that end. They're going to do something else.
Well, yeah, it's going to be in digital form. I mean, we're still going to have U.S. dollars, but they're not going to be. They'll be digital dollars, and which are. Boy, we've done so many segments on that. That topic alone takes like a week's worth of podcasts. We already have the Unicoin, which we reported on. It's all
infrastructure's in place to do that and to make it happen. So when you look at those charts and you see all of those things, we're in for a massive discourse, and it comes down to that Klaus Schwab quote where he says that there's going to be a potential massive cyber attack in the financial sector, and there's going to be a massive hack. And when you think about what he's saying, that actually kind of makes sense that you would do something like that to get rid of the fiat system. So, and they're putting all of the chips on the table, getting everything ready and lined up. So when they finally do execute on that cyber attack, we've got the solution. So it's they've already got the solution to the problems that they've created, and here it is here like that. And it's coming to the surface. You don't have to look very far to see that anymore. The unspoken truth is now becoming the mainstream narrative, for heaven's sake. And who would have thought? It's unbelievable.
Yeah, the CBDCs, and I was talking about this a year and a half ago on my channel. That predicted for the CBDC to achieve its final end, which is full implementation by the public, as that woman put it. How can we convince them to do what they're told? I love the way she put it. Do what you're told. How can we get them to do what they're told? There's going to need to be a World War III type event. It might not be an actual shooting war, but it's going to be some kind of a major catastrophe. It's going to be like a World War II type event where people are going to feel the need to forego their personal freedoms temporarily. Maybe they'll probably paint it as for the sake of the good, for the sake of the overall good.
Let me push back on that.
Okay.
I think it's way, 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 way easier than that. Because I also think that those people that are in charge don't want World War III. They don't want a nuclear war. No, nobody does, right? No normal person wants that. So how could you get people to comply with getting a digital ID and getting central bank digital currencies? How could you get them to comply? I'll get you to comply in the next 90 seconds, yeah? Ready? Mm-hmm. I'm going to turn off your access to the internet. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In order for you to access the internet, you're going to have to put your digital ID number in, and it's going to be part of your browser when you log in with your Gmail. Your Gmail will be tied to your digital ID, so you're logged in automatically. And all of those things will exist in the background. They'll be invisible to you. You can't see any of them. But now the government can see everything that you're doing and everything that you're saying, and your behavior will determine how many credits you do or you don't get. Your contribution to the society based on your behavior will determine how many credits you do or you don't get. And I think that is already available because all of the infrastructure is in place for that to actually work, and that could exist already. It doesn't have to be built. These systems don't have to be built. You're already, if you're using Google Chrome right now and you're logged into your browser, that the CIA can see everything that you're doing, everything. We now know that Twitter was created by the intelligence agencies, right? It was backed by the VC in Silicon Valley to actually help them build it. And so now I say, was Bitcoin created by them as well? You know, there's that age-old theory that it was created by the CIA to get people used to these types of things. And who is Satoshi Nakamoto anyway? No one knows, and he never took any of the Bitcoin that he created. So that could all be a financial ruse as well. It's a honeypot. We know AI is a honeypot. We know ChatGPT, if you don't plug into their API and you're typing on the front end of their GUI on the front end, whatever you type there, they can see, and they're collecting all of your data. And how many millions, there's 20 plus million users of ChatGPT now, every day typing in there hundreds of things. I use it like 30 times a day. And every time I type in there, they can see exactly what you're doing.
Well, what I meant by a World War III type event, I said type for a reason. Not it doesn't have to be an actual World War III. It has to be some massive event. Maybe the stock market goes down 90% in value. Maybe the U.S. dollar collapses because between BRICS and the de-dollarization. Maybe some major thing happens that changes our lives dramatically, and we're in like a depression type environment, and the government has a solution. They've got a solution. So that's what I meant by a World War III type event, some kind of a massive event that's going to, make everyone comply. But they're going to, because if they just say, all right, we're going to demand everyone adopt the CBDC, by Christmas, people are going to say, well, screw you. So they've got to do it a more subtle way. They can't just blatantly say, this is what you're going to do. They have to make the conditions of your life such that you have to make the changes if you want to live your life. So, which is pretty much what you were saying. But I don't think they would dare make it as blatant as. There's no way they'll just say, you want to sign into your Google account? Well, you can't use your debit card. You got to use this, right? Little subtle ways of getting people to change.
If you think it can't happen, they've taken your ability to transact. I think I said it to you the other day, the ability to transact in Australian dollars out of Binance here in Australia.
They're already doing it.
No more Aussie fiat dollars in, no more selling whatever crypto you've got back to AUD and back to your bank account. No more, Yeah. And Binance's excuse is, we've got a dispute with our payment provider and it's not working. No, they don't have a dispute with anything. What a load of garbage. This is the beginning of the end. One thing you say that we need a World War III type scenario that will happen. So when you think about this thing in its totality, the unspoken truth is this. There's only 4 things that affect every single person on planet Earth, 4 of them. 1 is an asteroid strike, because it might destroy almost all of us. 2 is a nuclear war. 3 is a pandemic, a real one, not a fake one, not a made-up one by some freak in a white coat. And the 4th one is climate change. If that was like a real version of climate change, if there was an asteroid strike, then that would create climate change, and it affects every single person on planet Earth. So when you think about they want to change the entire way the world works, the entire financial system, what is the thing there that they can control? Well, they can't control an asteroid strike. They can control a nuclear war. They can create another pandemic, because that's what they did the first time. And climate change, well, they can't, all they can do is scare you with that. But they can't do anything to actually make that happen to affect everybody, because it's not even real. It's completely fake. So I think you're left with another pandemic or a nuclear war. And as you say, nuclear war could come in different forms. It could come in a nuclear cyber war. If you just use those words and kind of substitute them for something else, like nuclear, like a financial war is equivalent to a nuclear war. You could reap as much destruction with a financial war and a massive cyber attack like Klaus is saying is actually going to happen than you could with physical weapons as well. So it's a very scary proposition and a scary time. So Ed, it begs the question, man, what can anybody do about any of this when we see it?
Reduce the exposure to your bank, buy some gold and silver, and establish streams of passive recurring income. Okay, that's a good start. And load up on barterable items. toilet paper, toothpaste, soup,
bourbon,
rum,
coffee,
coffee, yeah, and stay educated. I think it's also really important to get involved in a community, a good community or two, people that you can rely on when things get bad. So if you're a hermit, even if it doesn't matter joining an online community like the one that Rob has formed, the one that Rob and I are in, and Rob's going to tell you about that in a second. That's going to be a very valuable community for people who are freedom lovers and sovereign human beings. So that's one of the most important things you can do is get involved in a community of like-minded people, so you can share ideas, share support.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I saw a little quote this morning that kind of reminded me of what you're talking about. If you want to go fast, go by yourself. But if you want to go a really long way, you got to go with other people. And if you want to be able to sustain what it is what the journey that is that you're on, you need to do that with other people. You can't be a loner. No one achieved any greatness in their life by being a loner. And it's very hard to find like-minded people that want to have these conversations and discuss these things and to prepare to do something about it. Because if you just talk to regular, normal people that are going to work, going home and worried about paying their bills and their mortgage, I'll think you're a tinfoil hat wearing freak. But the reality is, the unspoken truth is that you're just preparing for the worst case scenario. And if the worst case scenario doesn't come to pass, it doesn't matter. Nothing bad actually happens. But at least you've got one eye on that, and you can live your life with a little bit of peace and serenity and calmness, knowing that if the worst does come to pass, you won't be like jumping and scared when something goes really wrong. When the world does come undone, you go, okay, now I'm going to act on my plan. I had a conversation with my mate Laura yesterday on this show, and we were talking about business and some of the biggest mistakes I've seen people make in business over the years in my IT space, where I work with startups, is they have these really great ideas. They've got stars in their eyes, and they think that their idea is going to make millions of dollars. So we build them a website, we help them get going, we run their advertising campaigns, and when stuff starts to go wrong, often you'll find the founder in the corner, curled up in the fetal position, crying. And not a lot of people will tell you that business is hard, but not many people will tell you why it's hard or what's hard about it. And it goes to the very heart of what we're talking about here when we're talking about prepping. You're prepping your mind, you're prepping your heart and your spirit, and you're ready for anything, because the worst case scenario might happen. And in business, if you haven't taken the time to sit down and to write down the 50 really bad things that might happen to you as a result of this, and seeing the second and third and fourth and fifth order effects of those things, if you haven't wargamed that in your mind or played that game of chess with yourself in your mind, when something goes wrong, you will end up in the corner in the fetal position crying in your pillow. And that's the mistake that people make about all of this news media and all of this content that's out there, where you go, man, it's so negative. Why do I want to see that? Why do I care? Well, the reality is you should care, because if you don't start paying attention to these things, when things go wrong, your reaction to them will be amplified to a point where you're like, really? They fired a nuclear missile? Really? Are we next? Is it coming to us? What do we do? Where do we go? What happens? Imagine having to deal with all of those things in the worst possible case scenario. And we've never been closer to that happening ever in human history. Here we are on the precipice of it, but people are just not ready for it.
Yeah, but Rob, that could never happen.
It can never happen. There's the optimism bias. All right, let's take a break, folks. Today's show, if you don't know already, is brought to you by you. In this crazy, uncertain world, we all need a way to protect and insulate ourselves from the outside forces that we simply cannot control. I'm a news junkie, and after a lifetime of constantly immersing myself in the darkness and the despair that engulfs the world, the path to shield myself and my family has become crystal clear. I want to invite you to come and join me in the Unspoken Truth community, where I'll show you how I protect my family from this crazy world. You'll get access to 3 masterclasses worth over $1,000, as well as our live events, training, and community of truthers just like you. Come on over to the unspokentruth.com.au and join us for just 50 cents a day. What are you waiting for? Get started now at the unspokentruth.com.au. Alrighty, I've got an update on the war in Ukraine. But before I go anywhere near any of that, what I want to do is I want to play a video for you from the same lady of the video that I just played. And it's pretty telling. It only goes for a minute, so let's take a quick look here.
Imploring the people and all the peoples around the world, for God's sake, stop giving your democratically elected governments the benefit of the doubt. They are not deserving of that. They are not. Stop rationalizing whatever your government is doing. Stop rationalizing and come up with some good intentions. They have no good intentions. Never. As I said before, in the entire history of mankind, there has never been a political elite concerned about the well-being of regular people. And it isn't any different now. Why should it? Stop giving them the benefit of the doubt. Because I can tell you, you cannot comply your way out of a tyranny. It is impossible. Trying to do so, you will only feed a gigantic alligator in the hopes of being eaten last. But guess what? Your turn will come, and then you will be the one swallowed up.
All right, I wanted to start off that because you know, some people have a way with words that really gets to the very heart of feelings as well. And that lady did a good job, particularly right at the end, saying, you know, if you think that you're supporting these people and they care about you, they just don't. At no time in human history has anyone in the political class ever cared about you. All they care about is getting re-elected and holding on to the power that they have. And we've seen that so many times in the 20th century where they'll do absolutely anything to destroy a society and to suppress you. We see it right now in China, where the CCP put Uyghurs into a re-education camp because they're Muslims. And it's not because they're Uyghurs or they're an ethnic minority or something like that. It's because religion is ruled out under communism. And the Uyghurs happen to be the Muslims. But where are all the Muslims of the world standing up against the CCP? Where are the Saudis? Where are all the head-chopping Wahhabis? Where are all the Sunnis and the Shias like going to bat for these fellas? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But if you think that you can back a politician and Kevin McCarthy's a good guy because he got a debt deal for you, you're wrong. Because Kevin McCarthy will send you to war just as quickly as Joe Biden will, just as quickly as Donald Trump will. And I'm so worried here in Australia that Anthony Albanese will do whatever the American government says and follow the American government into a war with Taiwan and China. And the problem is that the Australian military here, from my perspective, is so small that the forces that we send will be destroyed in the first week of the war. That's the reality. They'll be destroyed. All of them will be destroyed. That's the reality. The vast majority of Ukrainian troops that started the war less than a year ago are dead. They're dead. All of the Russian troops that started a year ago are dead. They're gone. They've been taken off the battlefield in one way or another. Either they've had a really long nap in the sunflower fields of Ukraine, or they've been taken away because they've been blown to pieces and they're injured and they can never live a normal life again. And my concern is that we're going to have to follow America into a war with China about Taiwan, and we can't sort that out because old men can't talk to each other. Xi Jinping is 70, Joe Biden's nearly 80, and these people can't talk to each other to solve these problems. Those two people have known each other for the last 20 years. They've been talking to each other for 20 years, and we're going to end up in a war, in a shooting war with them, maybe a nuclear war with them. Just yesterday, Taiwan came out and said, please, America, can you put us under your nuclear umbrella? Because we're really worried about that, and that will be the ultimate deterrence. All the weapons that you send to us don't matter, but if you put us under the nuclear umbrella and they attack us, then we can attack China with nuclear weapons. What? Where are we going? Are we at DEFCON 2? We're just a moment away from DEFCON 1 and somebody's pressing that red button and off we go. Here it comes. It's very, very scary. So let me just remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that no matter who is in power, in politics in your country, no matter what you think about the war in Ukraine or a potential war with Taiwan and China, no matter what you think about any of those things, war is a complete and absolute and total failure of humanity. And I just want to, I'll show you a couple of slides. I'm going to share my screen and I'll play a couple more videos for you here, but I want to show you what happened just a couple of days ago. So today is the 31st of May. This is 2 days on the 29th of May. So the Russians launched 37 cruise missiles, 29 Shahed drones and 1 Orlan drone in one evening. Imagine if you're on the receiving end of all of that, and they fired all of that at Kyiv. And imagine if you're on the receiving end of that. So they send hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment to kill people. Not even targeting military installations, it doesn't seem. They're just firing that stuff randomly. They're targeting something, of course, but the vast majority of it seems to miss its target and land on civilian targets. And then there's hundreds of millions of dollars of outgoing fire to destroy these things. And so you have $200 million worth of weapons come in, $300 million worth of weapons go out, and 1 or 2 or 3 of these things actually land and kill some people in the process. Like, war is a complete and total failure of humanity. And Zelensky's running around Europe on runways with his jumpers, showing everybody what a great leader he is, asking for more money. Olaf Scholz gave him 3 billion euros yesterday. Like, really, man, war is just a complete, total failure of humanity. Olaf Scholz, an old man, gave Zelensky, another old man, more money so he can fight another old man in the Kremlin. Do not follow these politicians blindly into a war. Do not buy into their propaganda, and do not buy into any of it. Let me share my screen and show you exactly why I don't want you to buy into that, because it is a complete and total abject failure of humanity. And this will remind you why. So this is the deep state map, folks. If you want to see the resources that I'm using, just scroll down, and in the show notes you can see it. So not much has happened in the deep state map in the last couple of in the last couple of weeks, just because we're in a stalemate because of the weather. But it looks like Bakhmut's been coming back. Wagner have pulled out of there. They're reinforcing the positions with Russian troops now, and the green part is what's been taken back. So they've been fighting in a stalemate for the last couple of months, really, in Bakhmut here in the eastern part of Ukraine, trying to take back this city. And the net result of that has been so many people being killed. They estimate 30,000 Wagner soldiers have been killed. And I would actually concur with that. I can't show you the photos or the videos, but I can show you photos that I was just looking at this morning from that part of the world where there's just rows and rows and rows of dead bodies. And I think in one photo, there was probably maybe 50 people on 2 sides of the road. It's like they recovered all the dead people and the vehicles were coming along to pick them up and take them away. But it's just the scale of it is unbelievable. In another video, I saw some Ukrainians assaulting some Russian positions, and as they're assaulting the positions, what they're actually doing is they're clearing the Russian trenches. But as they're moving up, all the artillery has killed everybody that's there. And there's literally 20 or 30 people in a 1-minute video that have been killed. And it's just the scale of destruction and the force of weapons is amazing. This is the total failure of humanity right here, folks, on the -Russia.com website. So 207,440 people have been killed. 410 people were taken off the battlefield yesterday. And it represents 92% of the Russian forces, the 900,000 in their regular forces. That's why they mobilize so many people, right? Because of that. So 622,000 wounded plus 200,000 there. The total is there. They've lost 7,000 vehicles, nearly 4,000 tanks, 3,400 artillery pieces, 300 aircraft, nearly 300 helicopters, and 18 ships and boats. I can tell you, folks, that this is a complete and total abject failure of humanity. And if you think that you can blindly follow somebody into a war because their politics is right, or they're right, or some country shouldn't invade some other country, you're wrong. Don't do that, folks. Whatever you do, do not follow your politicians. Do not join the military, and do not do anything that they tell you to do. I was in the military for 10 years following orders randomly by these leaders. And when I look back at that, that looks like a mistake. That seems like a mistake. And I don't regret many things in my life, but following those orders blindly and behaving like that and doing those things and marauding across other countries, that seems like a mistake. Luckily, I wasn't involved in a high-intensity conflict like in Afghanistan or Iraq. I was part of a multinational task force enforcing sanctions against Iraq in 1996. So you're enforcing sanctions, inflicting pain on the general population by stopping cargo ships and saying, no, you can't have that food, no, you can't do that. How many millions of kids died as a result of those sanctions? A lot of people died as a result of those sanctions, a lot of people. And I put my hand up and say I was part of that. And I was part of that because my government told me to go and do that. Is that a good thing? Do I live with regret related to that? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't feel proud of it, that's for sure. And if they want you to go and fight in a place like Ukraine, this is what happens. I want to show you the Russian perspective, and I want to give you a perspective you've never seen here. So here's another video that came out yesterday, and I'll share that with you right now. So if you're listening to this, this is a Russian soldier surrendering.
Да. Не заебашить. От сюдою, блядь, от сюдою.
Все, ты хай залазь.
Что, принимаешь?
Забирай, блядь, забирай все вот это.
Все,
блядь.
забрал.
Ложись.
Руки ко мне вытягивай. Руки в замок. Ползешь. 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 Ползешь, говорю, блядь. Ползешь. Отстегивай ему пояс. Отстегивай пояс, блядь. Пацаны, муху заберите отсюда. Забирай, блядь.
So if you're just listening to that, folks, it's a Russian guy surrendering and he's crawling on his hands and knees, and then he comes up on his knees with his hands on his head. He chucks his helmet off. The Ukrainians say, hey, get down, crawl over here, get into the trench. They pull him into the trench. They search him. They empty all of his pockets. They cut all of his clothes off him. Then they zip tie him and put tape around his eyes. They make sure he's all right. They give him a drink and make sure he's good to go, and then they get rid of him. And when you look at that, you think, man, it must take some really big kahunas to be in one of those trenches fighting like that, World War I style. Imagine how big that guy's balls are to walk across the dead ground there, the no man's land in the middle, all the way to a Ukrainian position and potentially be shot by your side and potentially be shot by the Ukrainian side. So you're worried about getting shot from the front and from the back, and then he goes over there, puts his hands up and goes, I had enough. I had enough. And I thought to myself when I saw that, man, that is like maybe one of the bravest things I've ever seen, ever, that a soldier do. And he's surrendering. And it's brave on many fronts because he's risking being shot by his own troops and he's risking being shot by the enemy, the Ukrainians, on his front side. But then it's so brave for him to finally wake up and realize that fighting on behalf of Putin, fighting Zelensky, is just a moot point. It's just stupid. Why are you even doing that? Why are you perpetuating that? And I sort of look at these things and I think to myself, if you were in World War II and you were in a concentration camp and you were a Nazi guard, would you perpetuate it? Oh, I was just there. I was just doing my job. Those Nazi guards in the Nuremberg trials just all shrugged their shoulders and went, no, I wasn't there. There's a good book out there, folks. Every person on planet Earth should read the book. It's called Ordinary Men. Yeah. And it's about German police officers that go into Poland after Germany rolls up Poland at the start of World War II. So they go in there and the army doesn't go and take over law and order. They put the cops in there like they have in every other city on planet Earth. The cops go in there. They're older guys. They're like my age. They're in their mid to late 40s. And these older guys, there's a platoon of them. There's like 30 of them. One morning, the boss comes out, stands them all in a hollow square. Like anyone that's ever been in the military on a parade in the morning knows what that feels like. And he says, righto, the orders have come down from the fatherland. And they've said to us from Berlin that we need to go and get all the Jews and round up all of the Jews. Anybody that doesn't want to do that, just go over there. And there's a couple of people that step out. What happens if we don't want to do it, boss? We'll just send you back to Berlin. We'll put you on the next train. A couple of people step out, off they go. So the book is written by an investigative journalist who goes back and finds all the people in that platoon and goes back and says, what happened? And so they go and tell all the stories of what happened, but they say, I was there, but I never did any of that. We went and kicked all the doors in. We dragged everybody kicking and screaming to the town square. We loaded them onto trucks. We took them out where they dug all of the ditches and the trenches, and we lined them up. And then the other people that were there, they shot them. I never shot anybody. So every story that's recounted is showing you that they were there and it happened. Okay, cool. You're trying to absolve yourself of the responsibility that you murdered hundreds of Jewish people in that Polish town. Okay, cool. I understand that you're trying to absolve yourself of it, but you didn't try and prevent any of it from happening, did you? You didn't get in the way and go, hey, we can't do this. You never spoke up. You never did anything. You're complicit. You're complicit if you go to a war in Ukraine against Russia. You're complicit in the crimes that these politicians are perpetrating. You're just an instrument and a tool of that. And if you need to put your hands up and surrender, you should. Russia shouldn't have invaded Ukraine. There's no doubt about that. I'm not condoning that, not for a second. But what I'm saying to you is that governments don't care about you. The policies and the politics of government and war, they don't care about normal people because it's normal people that are sent to war. All right, I want to shift gears here and share a video with you from a captured Russian soldier. So this is only from a couple of days ago, so it's translated. So if you're listening to this, you'll be able to catch what he's saying. Just listen very closely to the way that he's treated. And I want you to remember back to the very first video I showed you just a moment ago about that woman saying, whatever you do, don't give your power to the democratically elected political class. Don't give your power to them, because if you give your power to them, this is what's going to happen to you.
Set up checkpoints and said, if there is any movement in our direction, open fire. Later they started running away from their position. fleeing the fire. We told everyone else through the radio that our guys are running away, and the commander said, "Open fire on them." I asked, "But it's our guys, why should we shoot them?" He told, "Shoot. They must not be running away. They should not be afraid." So basically it is the same as it was during Stalin's times. Barrier troops at the rear that shoot you if you return or run away from fire. That's the way it is, I'm telling you. They don't give you a chance to survive. I've escaped from the service 4 times, but they found me and made me go back to war. I voluntarily consent to be filmed and recorded. My name is Konstantin Valerievich Grigoriev. I was born in 1992 in Peshchane, Starobilsk area, Donetsk region. After the military training, I escaped again. They searched for me over a month. Eventually, I got caught and sent back to war. We don't go to jail for that anymore now. There is no such thing as going to jail for desertion. The punishment is entirely different. You get beaten up and sent back to war. Moreover, you are being sent to the front line because you are guilty. You get punished that way if you escape, get drunk regularly, or do some things like that. They beat you up and make you go to the hottest place of the front line. If you survive there, they send you to even worse position. If you survive there as well, then you can get an amnesty and live like a regular soldier. Beastliness. That's why I ran away. I surrendered because I was sick of this. They don't see us as human beings and didn't give us food or clothes. Everything we have, uniforms, shoes, backpacks, and everything else we buy at our own expense. They say that you have a salary, then you buy it. But to be able to get that salary, you need to at least survive until you can have it. Every day it just gets more and more terrifying.
All right, I want to just remind people that he consistently throughout that interview, he says they. So my question to you, Ed, who is they?
Well, the political class. No, he was a Ukrainian, right?
No, he's a Russian.
He's a Russian. Okay, well, okay. Because he said he talked a lot about the Donetsk region there, so I thought maybe
that's where he was from. Yeah,
got it. Yeah. Well, they are the political class who send him to war.
And so he's saying his commanders told him to shoot the Russian troops that were running away, and he said, "But they're our troops." And he said, "It doesn't matter. They're running away. They shouldn't be scared. They should be fighting. So shoot them." So that's what happened in World War II under Stalin. And that's happening today.
Yeah, you've seen the movie, I'm sure, Enemies at the Gate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's about Stalingrad, right?
Yeah.
So that happened in that movie, and we're seeing that play out today in real time. And that interview, by the way, is one of probably hundreds of interviews that have been conducted in the last couple of months. And I've seen the same thing being said over and over again, same times. So I wonder, I kind of question myself and say, is that the Ukrainian propaganda that they want you to hear? So, but when you see these people, they seem genuine when they're talking about it, and they're genuinely relieved and glad that they're no longer on that side and that they've been captured, because they get 3 square meals a day and nobody's shooting at them and no one's trying to kill them. And they're like, we didn't know. Well, we just did what we were told to do, and then we went forward and committed all of these crimes and did all of these things. There's another interview that I saw where there was a bunch of civilians leaving the town where the Russians were moving up into the position they were taking it, and they were ordered to kill everybody on the way out. And the fellow was like, but they're like families, like there's like women and children. He goes, doesn't matter, shoot them all. And the person interviewing him said, did you shoot the kids? And he goes, yeah, I did. I shot the kids, because if I didn't do what I was told, I was going to be shot. So I went and did it. So, you know, I get on my high horse and talk about, if you were a Nazi in World War II and you were seeing that happen, would you stop it? Would you do something about it? That guy there in the interview that we just watched tried to stop it. He tried to do something about it. And what he did, like that other fellow who surrendered, he surrendered. And that's how he stopped it, because he couldn't stop it, because he's only one person in a giant cog, one cog in a giant machine rather, and he couldn't stop it. He couldn't do anything about it, so he surrendered. And that's his way of stopping it. He takes himself out of the fight completely, but it's at his own expense. And that the bravery of that is unbelievable. And that's what a real person, that's what a real sovereign person does. A sovereign person thinks for themselves. They don't be influenced by critical thinking about what governments are telling me to do. And if something is feeling wrong, it doesn't feel right that I have to go and get an injection in my arm for something. It doesn't feel right that they're telling me to do that. There's no possible way they could have tested that in 3 months. No possible way that I'm ever going to report on my neighbors. None of that feels right. So I'm going to do everything which is the opposite of what you tell me. I'm not ever going to do anything that the government tells me to do ever again. Don't join the military, folks. Whatever you do, don't join. Don't join. Do not join. Otherwise, you're going to be in a war like this. Really, is the war between Russia and Ukraine our business here in Australia? We're the second largest non-NATO contributor. Never mind how many gazillions of dollars the American government on your side there, Ed, is spending on this, and they're giving that money to them, supporting them, perpetuating them. And the reality is they could have shut it down in 2 months, 6 months ago. If the Americans got involved properly and you let them off the leash, you would have destroyed the Russians, taken back all of the land and ended it. It would have been over. That's it. But the American government has an interest in perpetuating it. And that's at the expense of the Ukrainians. And this is what happens when you follow your government blindly. It's crazy.
Yeah, and before people start saying there's no way I would do that, there's no way I would follow, do a little soul searching. Look back at that worldwide flu that we had going on there for a couple of years. And did you obey the order to stay home when there is no reason for you to stay home? Did you obey the order not to go visit your mother in the nursing home because you were ordered not to? Or did you say, screw you, I'm going to go see my mom? So do a little soul searching before you decide that you are better than anybody we just watched in those interviews. And the next time that we do have the government ordering you to do things for your own good, reflect back on this and maybe be the hero in your own little way. Be willing to push back a little bit. Be willing to say, no, I'm a sovereign human being. That was a heavy topic to end on.
It's heavy. It's heavy because those two soldiers that you saw surrendering, that one guy in the trench and then that other prisoner talking about it, they're just talking so frankly about it. And it just reminds me that war is just a complete and total abject failure of humanity. And the people that stand to gain the most never, ever go anywhere near a front line. Never. No. The people from those in the military industrial complex making hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a day on this war, they don't go anywhere near the front line. The people that are on the front line are the best and brightest of us. They're the best and brightest Ukrainians. They're the best and brightest Russians. They're young men that have the most to contribute to society as society moves forward. But they're sent forward to destroy society. It's the opposite. It's upside down. It's the paradox of it. And remember, folks, that Satanism is the inversion of everything that is good. Everything that you believe in is inverted and upside down. And that's because Satanists, whether you use it as a religious connotation or not, they're the people that are in charge. And my view is that you can resist all of that. And if you don't resist that, you're doing that at your own risk. Whatever you do, do not join the military in this modern day and age. Do not join. Don't join. If Joe Biden, imagine the morale. I think I saw a report just kind of in passing, just in the last couple of hours as I got up this morning, that the morale, and it was Ron DeSantis, that's what I saw. Ron DeSantis was a lawyer in the Navy, he was a JAG, and he's saying that the military is a very different place today than when he was in. And that's because he's involved in a high-intensity conflict in Iraq. He's going back and forth to all of these different places, and he's seeing the actual true cost of it. But now, when we're no longer in Iraq or no longer in Afghanistan in these high-intensity conflicts, morale has really dropped. And morale has dropped for a variety of different reasons. There's no conflict on the horizon or something that you're going to go to because you want to go and fight when you're in the military. And then you have an idiot like Joe Biden in charge who doesn't know his ass from his elbow and can't find his way off a stage or back inside of the house that he lives in, for heaven's sake. It's a very, very scary proposition. And if you're thinking about joining the military today, I would say, whatever you do, don't do that. They're going to send you into the meat grinder.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons why the morale is so low in military is because they pay these people so little. There are so many stories of our active military personnel who are on food stamps, and meanwhile we have no trouble spending millions of dollars on fancy armaments, not to mention sending 150 billion to a foreign country. Meanwhile, our own active military personnel are very often on food stamps. That's a disgrace. When we start engaging a war for success, now you said many times the war is a failure of humanity. Totally agree. However, it's a matter of perspective, right? If you're JP Morgan and you just landed a huge contract,
if you're BlackRock,
if you're BlackRock,
if you're the Reserve Bank, man, I'll print as much money as you want.
There you go. For them, it's a huge. So for them, it's a huge success.
You're right. I'm glad you ended it with some on a lighter note with some political hypocrisy there. I've got some closing remarks for us here today. What I would say, folks, is whatever you do, I just want to remind you, I want you to think for yourself. I want you to use your critical thinking. I want you to take your emotions out of what it is you're looking at or you're feeling or you're seeing. I want you to take those emotions away and say, what is the real story behind this? What is the real reason behind the Ukrainian government showing me that video of that captured Russian soldier? Why are they showing me that? Well, what they're doing is they're trying to show me exactly what's going on the Russian front lines. And they're trying to show me how crazy these Russian commanders are. But the Russian commanders, there's always somebody above you. The people on the front line, they're just human beings. They're just normal people. They're not cybernetic robots from a Terminator movie out there to kill everybody that they can. They're human beings with feelings and thoughts, and they're thinking, critical human beings. And the people that are telling them what to do and telling them what to do and telling them what to do, that's coming from an old man sitting in the Kremlin. The old man there is saying, whatever, just get it done. I don't care what the cost is, just make it happen. And the cost is hundreds of thousands of Russian lives, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian lives. All of the treasure that we have, we're handing over to them. Why is Australia the second largest contributor on earth to a country committing war crimes on a daily basis? Bit of a stretch. The unspoken truth is, I can show you the folder on my desktop filled with dozens and dozens of Ukrainian war crimes. Killing people, killing Russians outside the laws of armed conflict. That's a war crime. You can't kill medical parties. You can't use anti-tank guided missiles to kill 5 people, 1 on a stretcher and 4 people carrying them. But I've probably got 5 of those videos. ATGMs fired at that. Are they javelins, by the way? Because they sure look like javelin missiles when they're fired at them. They don't look like Cornet missiles, and they don't look like faggot missiles from the Soviet side. They look like our stuff, and they look like NLAW missiles being used to kill Russian medical parties outside the laws of armed conflict. But Australia is the second largest contributor to this conflict. What? They want to give the Ukrainians all of our vehicles. What? Russia shouldn't have invaded Ukraine. I'll say that again. They shouldn't have done that. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, we shouldn't be supporting the most corrupt country on planet Earth and giving all of our treasure and all of our equipment to them, really.
But it's all about, defending democracy, isn't it, Rob?
That's the best final thought ever, my friend. That's the best one ever. All right, let's get out of here. Let's say goodbye, folks. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your support. We appreciate your comments. Don't forget to follow us as the podcast, and make sure you scroll down and join the Telegram channel. I share a whole lot of stuff over there that simply cannot be shared on this platform. Let's get out of here, Ed. See you tomorrow, mate. Bye for now.
Same bad time. See you guys.